Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Got an interesting story sent to me here by a viewer named B. Demon, and it says CFPB orders Equifax to pay $15 million for improper investigations of credit reporting errors. So consumerfinance.gov is the website this comes from. This is straight from the government. And keep in mind that Equifax is one of them companies that tracks your credit. So if you go to apply for a loan someplace and they pull your credit, Equifax is one of the companies that might provide them the report on you and your loan worthiness. And of course, what happens if they make a mistake? And so we've been talking about this recently, that there are laws in place that they've got to follow. But for instance, you have the right to see your credit report. If there's mistakes in it, you've got the right to object to them. And they're required, and this is all the credit reporting bureaus, they're required to investigate and do certain things. And the CFPB says they looked into this and found out that Equifax wasn't doing what they're supposed to do. So the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau took action against Equifax, the nationwide consumer reporting agency, for its failure to conduct proper investigations of consumer disputes. They also allegedly allowed previously deleted inaccuracies to be reinserted into credit reports, providing confusing and conflicting letters to consumers about the results of its investigations, and used flawed software code which led to inaccurate consumer credit scores. The order requires Equifax to comply with federal law, and Equifax must pay $15 million in civil penalties, which will be deposited into a victims relief fund run by the CFPB. And so I know a long time ago when I first started talking about this, there are three primary big agencies that do this kind of reporting. And I've heard stories before. Somebody said, I found a mistake in one of the reports. So I disputed it, and they removed it. And then I discovered it somehow popped up on another report by one of the other agencies. So I disputed that. They removed it. And then, weirdly, it popped up, and it's like the game of whack-a-mole, as they say. So the director of the CFPB said Equifax failed in its basic duty to investigate and resolve consumer disputes about inaccurate information on their credit reports. Today's order requires Equifax to pay a civil penalty and follow federal laws on handling credit reporting disputes. Equifax is a nationwide consumer reporting agency with headquarters in Atlanta, Georgia. The parent company is Equifax. The company under them is Equifax Information Services, and is one of the three major consumer reporting agencies in the U.S. It aggregates data about most adult consumers and sells that data to its customers in the form of consumer reports that are used by lenders, employers, landlords, and others to make important decisions about consumers. Equifax processes approximately 765,000 disputes each month. And I can tell you that when I first became a lawyer, I handled some lawsuits against insurance companies. And I found out that there were insurance companies that if you filed a claim, they'd pull your credit report. And when they pulled your credit report, they'd take a look at it to see how your credit is. And if your credit wasn't good, they'd go, ooh, this person had an incentive to commit insurance fraud. And I actually handled cases where when I asked, what makes you think this claim was fraudulent, they'd say, well, look at your client's credit report. And I'm not even sure that's a proper use of a credit report, but the Fair Credit Reporting Act requires consumer reporting agencies to investigate the accuracy of disputed information and take steps to ensure consumers' credit reports are accurate. For example, consumer reporting agencies must provide notice of a consumer dispute to the furnisher who provided the disputed information, conduct reasonable investigations to determine whether the information is accurate or not, and provide the results of the investigation to the consumer. So I can let you know right now, I've pulled my credit report and found something on it that was wrong. It was a mistake. It was false. It was untrue. So I sent a letter to the reporting agency and said, this is incorrect. And once you dispute it, they're supposed to find out who they got the information from, confirm it, or see that it can't be confirmed, and then either correct it or say, well, we looked into it, it's accurate. The only time I've had to do that, they immediately removed it because it was inaccurate. I've heard from people before who said the things keep popping up, keep hitting them down, and there you go. The CFPB found that Equifax violated FCRA's requirements for investigating and processing consumer disputes and assuring maximum possible accuracy of information on its consumer reports. The CFPB also found that Equifax violated the law by using ineffective systems and flawed processes and excessively deferring to furnishers to address disputes. Specifically, the CFPB found that Equifax harmed consumers by failing to thoroughly investigate consumer disputes. So they said that that's something they did not do properly, was the investigations. They're also accused of putting previously deleted errors back into the credit reports and failing to block identity theft-related information. So a mistake got removed. A little while later, they put it back in again. And they're accused of sharing inaccurate credit scores and data about consumers with lenders. So coding errors in Equifax's internal software caused the company to miscalculate and share inaccurate credit scores for several 100,000 consumers, according to the CFPB. Company also reported the same credit accounts multiple times for more than 50,000 consumers. I know attorneys who do nothing but deal with credit reports, credit scores, credit denials, and collection actions. It's all kind of wrapped up in one big area. And they tell me that stories they see are just horrific, involving all of the credit reporting companies. And I remember back in law school, we actually read a case about a guy. This goes way back. I'm talking about 70s and 80s in terms of the actual report of the story. About a guy who found something inaccurate in his credit report, and he couldn't get it removed. So he sued the credit reporting agency for defamation. He said, hey, what they're doing is the equivalent of libel. They're making false statements about me because there's stuff in that report that's false. They know it because I've told them, and they won't remove it. And this is before some of these laws existed. And the courts actually said, well, you can't prove that they did this to you intentionally. So, they probably ought to remove that, but you can't sue them for, like, punitive damages. So that's one of the reasons they created laws like this, so there is some ramification for companies that don't do this properly. So under the Consumer Financial Protection Act, the CFPB has the authority to take action against institutions violating consumer financial protection laws, including the Fair Credit Reporting Act and the prohibitions on unfair, deceptive, or abusive acts or practices under the Consumer Financial Protection Act. The order requires Equifax to follow federal law and pay a $15 million penalty, which is going into a victims relief fund. I've gotten emails from people, including one I got last night from somebody who says, Steve, I just got a check, a large check from the CFPB regarding a case they settled. Now, I don't think it was this case, but it was another case. But the point is, it was substantial. It was not 13 cents in a coupon. It was a couple $1,000s. So the CFPB there is doing good work, but the problem here is that Equifax, they make so much money doing this, and all they do is they scrape up all this data about different people, and then they create a report about you. You go into a car dealership, for instance, to buy a car, and they go, oh, we're going to pull your report. And they pull your credit report, and if it's accurate and truthful and correct, that's great. If it's got a mistake on it, it might either block you from getting the loan or allow them to charge you a higher interest rate. And keep in mind that Equifax isn't doing this on purpose. They're doing it by accident. That is, they're just handling so much information that they get most of it right. But there are laws that say, no. You've actually got to take certain steps. And the interesting part about the law is that you are allowed to see your credit report every so often. There's a whole process for that. And you get a copy of your credit report and you read it and you find a mistake in it. It is on you to let them know. But once you let them know, they're required to take certain steps to verify it. And if it's incorrect, to correct it. And once it's corrected, it should stay corrected. And if they don't do those steps, then they've broken the law. So this is an interesting story. I'm glad it happened. But again, I've heard so many instances of people who said, I found something on my credit report that was just crazy. It says that I had a loan that I defaulted on. And number one, I've never defaulted on a loan. Number two, I didn't have that loan. I don't know where that came from. And as you can imagine, some of the problems pop up because information gets put in the wrong file. So if you have a common name, heaven forbid your name is, John Smith. There might be somebody else with a John Smith, same middle name, living near you, roughly the same age. And next thing you know, what that person does ends up in your credit report. and stuff in your credit report winds up in theirs, or, in your history winds up in theirs. And I understand how that could happen. But once they're notified of it, they should straighten out. So B. Demon, thanks for sending this from consumerfinance.gov. The CFPB has ordered Equifax to pay $15 million for improper investigations of credit reporting errors. And this whole thing was handled with the court, meaning that they filed an action, they reached a settlement, and the settlement was entered with the court. So this is a done deal, as they say. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law.
I had the right to remain silent, but I didn't have the ability.